A cup of water passed within arm's reach of a dying man, and he did not take it. He was surrounded by thousands of people. Children were moving through the crowd, offering water to anyone who asked. He watched the cups go by. He said nothing. He reached for nothing. The plain was vast and without shade. The sun sat directly overhead, and the ground threw the heat back upward. The crowd was enormous. Thousands of pilgrims gathered in one place, pressed together, breathing the same scorched air. Water was being passed around. There was enough, but not for everyone. Among the thousands, one man stood apart from no one. He looked like everyone else, robed, sun-worn, lips cracked, but inside his body, something was giving way. His throat had closed around its own dryness. His legs were losing their argument with the ground. He was dying of thirst, and water was right there. He had been standing in that place for a long time. The crowd had arrived in waves throughout the morning. He had watched them settle, watched the water distribution begin, watched the children take up their cups and begin moving through the masses with a kind of quiet purpose. He had not moved toward them. He had waited. The children moved with care. They did not run. They watched the faces of the people they approached, though we do not see those faces, and they offered the cup forward with both hands. Some people drank deeply. Some took only a small sip and passed the cup back. The children refilled and continued. They did not stop. The man watched all of this. He tracked the movement of the children across the crowd. He could see which direction they were heading. He could have stepped forward, raised a hand, made himself visible. Any small gesture would have been enough. The children were looking for people who needed water. He was a person who needed water. And still, he did not move. There are different kinds of thirst. There is the kind that makes you grab. There is the kind that makes you beg. And there is a third kind, quieter, more dangerous, where a person has decided something about themselves that they will not say out loud. This man had that third kind. He was waiting for something specific. He did not know yet what it was. One of the children came closer. The man could see the cup in the child's hands. Clay, simple, still wet on the outside from recent filling. The child was moving through the crowd with steady, unhurried steps. The man's body responded before his mind did. His throat tightened. His hands trembled slightly. The cup was coming toward him. The child stopped in front of him. The cup was extended forward. The man looked at it. He could smell the water, that faint mineral smell that water carries when the air around it is completely dry. His hands rose slightly, almost without his permission. The child held the cup steady. The crowd moved around them as if neither of them existed. Then, the child asked a question. It was a short question. It was asked plainly, without accusation, without any particular weight. The child simply needed to know one thing before giving the water. It was a question about family. It was a question about children. It was the kind of question that should have had an easy answer. The question was this: is any child of yours among us? Are any of these children, these water carriers moving through this crowd, your son or your daughter? That was all. A simple question. The man heard it. He understood it. And he felt something drop inside his chest, the way a stone drops when it leaves a hand. He had no children among them. He had no children anywhere. He had lived a long life. a life that many would have called devoted, a life spent in practice and in learning and in the company of those who sought something beyond the ordinary. But he had not raised children. He had not sent anyone into the world to carry water. The child did not say this cruelly. The child did not say it as a punishment. The child simply stated what followed from the answer. There is no water for you. The system of distribution in that place, on that day, worked through the children. Water went first to those whose children were serving. The man had no child serving. Therefore, he had no water. He sat with that. The crowd continued around him. The children continued their work. He watched them, really watched them now, for the first time, not as carriers of water, but as people who had been prepared for exactly this moment by someone who had chosen to prepare them. Someone had decided years before this day that these children would serve here. Someone had given time to that. He thought about the years he had spent alone. He thought about the rooms he had sat in, clean rooms, quiet rooms, rooms where he had read and reflected and done the work he believed mattered. He had not been idle. He had not wasted his time by any ordinary measure. But he had been alone in those rooms. No small voice had interrupted him. No small hand had reached for his. He had always thought of those years as a kind of gift to himself, to his practice, to whatever he was building inside himself. He had been protective of that time. When people around him had married, had taken on the weight of families, he had watched them with a feeling that was not quite pity, but was close to it. He had believed he was choosing the harder path. Now, he was not sure. The children kept moving. He kept watching. He noticed the way they worked, not randomly, but with a kind of learned efficiency. They refilled without being told when to refill. They returned to the same areas of the crowd without being directed. They had been taught, not in one lesson, not in a single afternoon, but across years of small repeated moments that had added up to this competence. He understood now what he had not understood before. The water was not just water. The distribution was not just distribution. The entire system rested on a foundation that had been built long before this day, built in households, built in the patient repetition of small tasks, built in the years when the children were too young to carry anything heavier than their own curiosity. Someone had built that. He had not. His thirst had not gone away. If anything, it had sharpened. The body does not care about realizations. The body continues to need what it needs. But something else had changed in him, something that sat alongside the thirst without competing with it. A kind of recognition. Not regret exactly. Something quieter than regret. Something that had no name he knew. The afternoon moved on. The crowd began to thin at its edges. Some people had received water and moved to find shade or to rest. The children continued their work. He continued to sit. He did not ask again. He did not try to find another way to get water. He simply remained where he was and let the day continue around him, as it would, as it always does. He was a man who had given his life to something real. No one who knew him would have said otherwise. He had done what he believed was right, in the way he understood right. And yet here, at the end of a very long day, on a very dry plain, the gap in his life had become visible in a way it had never been before. Not as failure, just as fact. The sun continued its descent. The children, one by one, finished their rounds and came to rest at the edges of the crowd. Their clay cups were empty now. Their jugs were empty. The work was done. They sat down in small groups, their small backs visible, their heads leaning together. They had done what they had been prepared to do. The plain was quieter now. What you raise is what returns to you when nothing else can reach you. Not money, not reputation, not the years of work you did alone in a quiet room. What returns at the moment of real need is what you poured yourself into. Not for one afternoon, but across years. The children carrying water were not born knowing how to carry water. Someone made mornings with them. Someone made that choice. Think about what you are raising right now, not in a general sense. Specifically, what is growing in your household, in your presence, because of the time you are putting in. The man on the plain had built things, real things, but he had not built people. And on that day, only people could help him. The question the child asked was simple. The honest answer cost him everything. Who will remember you? And how? Not in monuments, not in anything written, but in the hands of the people who learned how to do something because you were there, patient, on an ordinary day when you had other things to do. Memory is not kept in stone. It is kept in the way a person pours water, carefully, with both hands, because they were shown how. The time you did not give, it does not disappear. It goes somewhere. It becomes the shape of the gap. The man on the plain felt that shape for the first time when a child walked away from him with a full cup. He was not a bad man. He was simply a man who had protected his time, and now his time could not protect him. That is not a punishment. That is just how it works. The man on the plain lived through that day. We do not know what he did afterward. We do not know if anything changed in him or if anything could change by then. We know only what happened on that afternoon, what he saw, what he heard, what he was unable to drink. The story ends there, on the dry plain, with the children resting, and the cups empty, and the man still sitting. The cup was there, the water was there, the children were there, and the one thing that would have connected him to all of it, he had simply